What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 107. We have got a jam-packed podcast. When I tell you, news couldn't have broke on a better day. I was telling Cameron before we started recording, it seems like every time we record, the very next day, big news breaks. We wait till the whole next time we record to talk about it. Well, right now, today, about 4 or 5 hours ago, it is official. Nick Saban is retiring from college football after 17 years of pure dominance at Alabama. He is retiring from college football. Absolute showstopper, absolutely biggest news that I've been a part of sports wise in my lifetime. This was the most shocked I've been. I honestly thought he was going to coach till he died, but if he was going to retire, I would have said 2 or 3 more seasons. So hearing this today, obviously as an Auburn fan, super happy, wishing nothing but the best, the greatest of all time. But I am a very happy camper. But I've got to get your thoughts on it, Cam. What's the first thing that went through your head? First thing that went through my head was, okay, Auburn has a chance to get Ryan Williams now. It's the first thing that went through my head after it processed. What's the first thing that went through your head when you got the news today or read it and you were like, what the hell? What was the first thing that went through your head?
I mean, I'll be honest. I obviously it was towards the end of a work day. I was actually working from home today, and I didn't catch it. It was about 3 minutes, I think, when Chris Lowe dropped the news. He's close to the program that Nick Saban was retiring. I got the update from Bleacher Report. I have those updates on my phone, so I saw it probably about 3 minutes after it dropped. I had my phone charged, and I saw it in bold, and I just did a double take. I was like, hold on, like I make sure I'm seeing this correctly. Obviously, first thing I do, go straight to Twitter. I'm like, I gotta make sure this is legit. Obviously, found out, within 2 seconds of logging on, or clicking on the app to say like it was real. First thing I did was tell my dad. I was like, you're not gonna believe this. Saban is retiring, and I guess after the initial shock, I guess you could say, and obviously not the most surprising thing in the world. I mean, you knew this was coming. I'm like you and most everybody else thinking he probably had 2 to 3 more years, honestly. But the first thing I was is just like thankful. I'm like, man, I just got to witness as a fan, my favorite team got to witness the greatest run in the history of college football and get to really enjoy and appreciate the best to ever do it in this game. I was just like, the first thing I was just like, man, I'm so glad I got to witness this and really be the age I could appreciate it. So, I mean, honestly, just thankful to Coach Saban, what he did at Alabama, and not only just what he did for the football program, but he elevated the entire university. I mean, you look at the money that's came in since he's been there. You look at enrollment since he got there; it's just went through the roof. He made Alabama not just a big football destination. He raised the profile of the University of Alabama as a whole. Did a lot of him and Miss Terry did a lot of great work in the community, and I think the 2011 Tuscaloosa tornadoes, I think that kind of entrenched him in the community, and I think was one of the main things that kind of like made Tuscaloosa and Alabama home for them. I think after that happened, and they did a lot with their foundation, Nick's kids, and building the houses with Habitat for Humanity. So it's just not only what he did on the field and how great he was. I mean, the accomplishments and the championships speak for themselves, but I think what he did off the field and in the community too. So he's just an absolute icon. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. But I mean, I think we could do this podcast for the next decade plus or so, and we may not have a bombshell like this for a long, long time. I mean, this is, I told you, I said, this is one of the biggest sports stories of the last, I don't know, decade, I feel like. And maybe I'm saying that because I'm, so close to it, I guess. But certainly it's the biggest bombshell report in college football, probably since he was hired, honestly. So just almost surreal, but at the same time, you knew it was, coming fairly soon. But just thankful to be able to witness it. Just kind of and I used this comparison earlier, and I don't mean to make it a comparison this way. Seems a little bit extreme, but the only thing I could compare it to really is almost like losing a grandparent. You knew it was coming, but it was still a shock at the same time. And like I said, I don't mean to compare a football coach to someone passing away. I mean, that, like I said, it's a extreme comparison, but at the same time, it's
it makes sense what you're saying. Getting the news.
you know what I mean? Like you knew it was coming to the end, but at the same time, when you see it and hear it for the first time, it's still a shock to you. And that's kind of how I describe this. But just really thankful to have, at least been a small part of it, been a fan of him and getting to go to games and see it, fairly up close and to cut, keep up with it. Just been really special. And just thankful for all he did. I mean, for Alabama football and like I said, the university, the community as a whole, and just an icon. It's greatest to ever do it, and just like I said, just thankful to appreciate it and to follow it. But just what a crazy day for college football, as you said. A lot of happy teams out there right now, a lot of happy coaches. Don't blame them one bit. I would feel the exact same way if I were in their shoes. But I think at the end of the day, regardless if you're an Alabama fan or even a Nick Saban fan, I think everybody, it's one of the few times that I've seen almost, unanimously everybody mention like this guy is undisputably the GOAT, the greatest to ever do it. And like, I think, like I said, regardless if you're a fan of him or not, I think everybody can kind of take a step back and like appreciate the greatness, kind of like a Tom Brady. Like there's a few icons, Michael Jordan, like here and there. There's icons from time to time. I think everybody can step back and just appreciate, his greatness and all he did, all he accomplished on the field, off the field, and just for the game of football, of college football as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of happy fans out there, rightfully so. Let's even the playing field back up. Got to believe that Kirby's going to try and take over that crown, but I don't think a streak of pure dominance like we saw at Alabama the last 17 years will ever be done again, especially with how college football is changing and the framework of college football. You're playing more conference games. There's no such thing as East and West now or sides of conference, focusing on the SEC here when I'm speaking on this, but there's going to be 1 to 2 lost teams that are in the playoffs every year now. It's going to be so hard to go undefeated. I know, we say that you talk about looking back at all the games and in the 4-team era, and there's only 3 teams that went undefeated, and it's like they're all recent in our recent minds, so we don't think it's that crazy of it happening, but it really, really is tough to go unbeaten, and especially now adding 2 more games. It's going to be extremely tough. The postseason is going to be electric. I'm excited for that. But we will never see a run like this ever again. Everyone's going to be compared to him, rightfully so. Like you said, he's the GOAT. It's the standard. He set the standard, and it'll be there forever. I mean, the standard was Bear Bryant, and I'm not just talking about Alabama. I'm just talking about of all coaches, it was Bear Bryant. He blew that standard out of the water and then kept climbing. And there is nothing close compared to the two. This standard will never be reached ever again. It can be close. I think Kirby's going to be up there and win a couple more, but winning 6 and he really won 6 in 15 years or 14 years, whatever it was. But the man is an absolute genius when it comes to football, the greatest 100% to ever do it. Alabama, 100% is still going to be good. They're going to get recruits because, like you said, of what's been built there now. They're not going to struggle in getting recruits, and it's an easier place to recruit to because of the success and things that have happened. But the run at Alabama that we all know and what we know Alabama as right now is no more. Again, they'll still be good, but the dominance and the pure just the intimidation factor of walking on the field, looking across, and it's the Nick Saban-led Alabama team. All of that, thank God, is done. I know the Bama fans are not happy about it, but y'all had your run. It's finally over. I'm tipping my cap to the greatest to ever do it, and I am smiling the biggest smile as I escort him out of the door.
Well, I tell you what, too, and I mean, I think you make a great point, and with obviously the way the game is changing, obviously with factors that we cover on a week in, week out basis with NIL and portal, I think if Saban would have stayed for the next, regardless of age, if he'd have stayed for the next 8 or 10 years, it would have been hard for him to replicate what
Right.
he's done the previous 8 to 10 years, just because of the way the game's changing, the playing field's being evened out, and obviously with him out of the game now, I think it's just even more so going to be that way. But like I said, with expanded playoff, NIL, and portal, especially in its current state that it's in now, it's going to be hard for anybody to. And obviously, a lot of the same teams are going to be at the top every year, but it's going to be hard to win. Even more challenging to win back to back and to win 3 out of 4, and to carry out that same level of dominance that Saban's ever been. Just the way the state of college football is, it's
Right.
going to be nearly impossible to do that anyway, regardless if it's Saban or somebody else
Right.
as we go forward. So yeah, I think the parity obviously is going to be probably at an all-time high, honestly. So just the way the game is now. So yeah, I think you
And
make a great point. A lot of people are happy, rightfully so. And like
in
you
a
said,
respectful way, though. Everybody's happy in a respectful way.
yeah, I agree with that totally. And like you said, I do want to get into this a little bit, into today a little bit, as far as kind of the news breaking earlier. Um, so they told out, obviously he called a team meeting around 4 today to let the players know. Um, he cited obviously his age, some health concerns, things like that. Obviously, the staff, according to reports, did not know until just minutes before, if even before then, to be honest with you. And those same reports, as of this morning, he was, looking to fill staff vacancies. It's a long distant memory now, but Kevin Steele retired a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So he had an open defense coordinator position that a lot of people felt it was going to be T-Rob filling that position, shifting up from defensive back coach. And then Hallman Wiggins left, receiver coach, went to Texas A&M. So as of this morning, he was working on filling those positions and doing his normal duties. And then it seems as there was a shift today. At the same time, that's the only part about this that is puzzling to me, because at the same token, same reports, they told the players in this meeting if they would hold their decisions for 72 hours, because they felt that they would have the next coach in place within the next 72 hours. So to me, if you're Greg Byrne, you had to know at worst this was a possibility, this was going to happen. Obviously, he wasn't going to get caught flat-footed or unprepared for this. So I have to think he knew a little bit ahead of time, certainly. But it does seem there was a little bit of shift today, at least according to reports as of right now, that as of this morning, he was working, kind of status quo. And then this afternoon, team meetings called, he's retiring, he's stepping down. So that's what I think people are maybe working to fill in the gaps a little bit, of if there was something that happened today to shift that a little bit. That's the only part of this that's puzzling to me as of right now. So I'm going to obviously curious to see how it unfolds, if there's any other reporting, if this was kind of, like I said, I'm hard pressed not to believe that this wasn't kind of planned in advance. As detailed as Nick Saban is, I can't imagine him just walking in the door and going, "Yeah, I'm retiring."
Right.
Like, I can't see him leaving the program in that kind of bind. Like, that's just not the kind of guy he is. He's way too detailed and cares way too much, to me, for that to happen. So you have to think, and the reports of like, hey, a new coach could be coming within 72 hours. You have to have a pretty good idea, if not almost a certainty, of who your next head coach is already going to be. So they certainly, you would have to believe, knew about this ahead of time, and certainly knew this was a possibility that he could step down after this season. So,
and I'd be willing to bet my whole paycheck that the college football world is not going to be short of Nick Saban content. That man is going to be in front of a teleprompter every Saturday for some network. I mean, he was on the Pat McAfee show all year, had a slot on there all year. Still maybe on there now. I'm not sure about it now, but I know he was just on his regular segment earlier this week or last week, and he's just prepping himself, man. He's going to get in the TV media. He's going to get there, and he's going to become an analyst of some sort. We're not going to never see Nick Saban again. He 100% is going to be around the college football world, and we're going to get to hear his knowledge week in and week out. And honestly, I hope that's true to hear, his insights on things. But I think he 100% is going to go into TV.
Yeah, I mean, there's already some, potential rumors like he could be on game day potentially.
Get Corso out of there, man. Get Corso out of there.
Everybody
Let Saban start putting the headgear on.
Everybody knows too, like, he's not the type of guy. He's not just gonna go to the beach and chill. Like, that's just not his. That's not his personality. I do want to read this tweet from Chris Lowe, obviously from ESPN. He's the one who broke this. He's been close to Saban and the Alabama program. He's covered them pretty closely a lot. I've been down there a bunch of times to interview him, so it wasn't a shocker that he was the one that broke this. But he tweeted out just a few minutes ago, actually. It also shouldn't surprise anyone that Nick Saban was working and interviewing potential assistants an hour before he told the team he was retiring. He told me last month, I'll know when it's time, but I won't scale back. I only know one way to do it. I can't do it any other way. So that's the thing is, I guess that brings a little clarity to, I think too, he was doing, obviously he had to know before today he was going to do it. Like, I don't think he just woke up this morning and decided it. It had to be on his mind at least in the last little bit. But I think he's the type of guy too. Like I said, he's not going to leave the program in a bind. I think he was doing things to make it as easy as possible for a transition. So like I said, wouldn't be surprised at all if this wasn't, in the works over the last little bit. Because like I said, he's not the type of guy to just leave them hanging, leave them in a bind. Like it was a well thought out, you're almost certain of. So I do want to get into, now that we know, hey, according to reports, new Alabama coach is pretty imminent within the next 72 hours, as everybody's saying. Obviously not a hot take here by any means, but I'd be shocked if it's not Dan Lanning, in my opinion. You've heard his name thrown out immediately. Brett McMurphy reported it almost immediately within a few minutes after Saban stepped down, that Dan Lanning was considered the top target. Mm-hmm. And to me, as I said a minute ago, if you're going to name your next coach, you believe within the next 72 hours, you almost certainly have to know who it already is. Or pretty much you would think agreed in principle to, okay, we know this guy's going to take the job. So I just really believe it's going to be Dan Lanning. I would be kind of surprised if it's not, honestly, just the way it's trending. You've heard some other candidates out there. I've heard, obviously Steve Sarkisian's name's been thrown out. Lane Kiffin, you've heard Mike Norvell. I mean, you're going to hear 15, 20 different names. Some of the top coaches are going to be thrown out for this. I just think Lanning just makes the most sense. I don't really see Sark leaving Texas. I do think Lane would take it if he's offered. In my opinion, I just don't see it happening, honestly. In my opinion, and just kind of what I've heard, over the years, from people. But, Lanning just seems to be the obvious choice to me. And I think now that Saban stepped down, the portal window has reopened for Alabama for 30 days. Because obviously guys can enter the portal if there's coaching changes, things like that. So I think it's very important to, obviously you got to get the hire correct, but it's very important to get a guy in as quickly as possible, because there's coaches around America absolutely licking their chops to get a hold of this roster, if at any way possible. You mentioned Ryan Williams earlier. He's decommitted from Alabama. That's the only one so far. Like I said, they told the team that they would hold off for a few days to let them get the next coach in place. That's why I think it's going to be Lanning. I personally think he would do the best job of being able to right the ship and keep things steady, keep guys on board that obviously they want to keep on board. And I was reading a report earlier that as far as NIL, they say Dan Lanning handles NIL conversations just as well, or if not better, than anybody in college football. You see the work he's done in the portal. He's recruiting his tail off in high school recruiting. I just think it makes a lot of sense. He's a young. I think it's going to be somebody that's a little bit younger, but somebody who's proven to be a very good head coach already. I just think it makes too much sense from that standpoint. And I think he could do the best job of coming in and kind of keeping things steady as they move through this transition. Obviously, like I said, with the portal window open. But it's going to be very interesting, certainly, because, I mean, a lot of these players, obviously, they're coming to play for Alabama, but really they're coming to play for Nick Saban, because Nick Saban's the GOAT. So there's going to be some guys transfer and leave out. So that's going to be very fascinating to see how the roster plays out even over the next couple of days. And then once a new head coach is named, how they can come in, kind of steady the ship, if you will, and kind of keep that roster intact, and how that turnover is going to play out over the next little bit. I'm fascinated to see that, but I don't expect any coaching search per se, because I think as we speak right now, I think they already know who the new coach is.
Yeah, I think Dan Lanning is his job to turn down. I've been on record on this podcast saying that I think Dan Lanning is going to be the next head coach at Alabama whenever that happens. But I've also been on record on this podcast saying multiple times that I would hate to be the guy that follows Nick Saban, and love to be the guy that follows Nick Saban. So right now we're at the point of the guy who's following Nick Saban. And I don't care how good you are. That's the standard you're going to be held to. We were talking about that earlier, but even more so because you're the one coming in right after him. So the pressure is going to be high, but I think Dan Lanning can handle it. And I think Dan Lanning, like I said, it's his job to turn down. But again, like I've also said, I don't envy his job at all. I would hate to be the guy that follows Saban.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what a task. I think Lanning is also the kind of guy too. I think he's a guy that you have to come in and embrace it, and kind of appreciate what he's done. Like, you can't shy away from it, but you also have to come in and be your own man too. You can't come in and be somebody nobody else can come in and be Nick Saban. Like, you have to embrace it, but you also have to be comfortable enough in your own skin to know, like, hey, I embrace it. I embrace what he did here, but like, I am my own man. Like, I have to, I have to be myself.
Right.
That's the only way somebody's going to be successful. So I think it's a kind of a fine line, if you will, of embracing it and kind of not shying away from that shadow, but also on the same hand, like, hey, I'm my own man. I believe in myself. And, obviously going to apply those same principles, but I can't emulate somebody else. I have to be my own self, and I believe in my own coaching abilities. And I feel like he's a guy that could be able to do that. So yeah, I will be, like I said, I think it's going to happen rather quickly. Could be tomorrow. We're recording this tonight, Wednesday night, January 10th. I think certainly by Friday you'll know something, if not sooner. They said 72 hours, so if you gave it that long, it would be Saturday afternoon. So certainly by then, I think you're going to know. I think it could be even as early as tomorrow or Friday. But I think, as reports everywhere indicating this should move pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, without further ado, we had something just kind of big happen earlier this week, and that was Michigan and Washington playing the national championship game. Just sucks for them that 2 days later, Nick Saban decides to retire and take over the media world, and every sports news article being written and every sports show talking the next 24, 48 hours is going to be about Nick Saban, when it would be still about the national championship game and where those teams are going to be and stuff like that. But it is the national championship game did just happen this past week. It was the national championship game that we didn't think we were going to get. Me and Cameron, we both picked the other two teams, but we did have a toss up between Washington and Texas. And then the national championship game was just it did not compare to the semifinal games at all. Michigan, man, they had a mission. They were on a mission this year, and I mean they did it. Hats off to them. They played really well. Their game plan against Washington was phenomenal. Their game plan against Alabama was really good. But man, they had pressure rushing four on Washington. They were on Penix all night. He looked off his game. It's probably the worst game he's had all year. Missing wide open guys. Now, the receivers weren't helping him out at times. They were dropping some passes, running some bad routes. And there was just Washington looked off their game. Michigan didn't miss a beat. I expect them to run the ball well. Broke two big runs early. And from then on, it just felt like Michigan all the way. They had a chance to really put it away. Didn't quite do that. Played around with them a little bit. But in the end, dominated them. Ran the ball down their throats. Dominated on defense. There was nothing Washington could do on either side of the ball. But, man, watching Michigan run the football the way they were doing it with multiple backs, just being able to tote it and carry them down the field. Hats off to Michigan's offensive line and their defensive line. They won in the trenches 100%. And, congrats to them. They're the best team in college football this year.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point. Just Michigan was the more dominant team up front. They were the more physical team in the Rose Bowl against Alabama. They were the more physical team in this game. Dominated the fourth quarter. Like you said, Michael Penix, uncomfortable all night, totally different guy, what we saw against Texas. And there were times, too, his receivers didn't help him out. Certainly, there were some plays that could have, should have been made.
But it wasn't the same quarterback we've seen all year at all.
No, absolutely not. I mean, he was definitely harassed, got banged up late in that game as well. Kind of over at that point anyway, but definitely, he was harassed for most of the night and certainly was not comfortable all night long. Like you said, was not the same guy, and pressure will do that to you.
Yeah.
You kind of saw it in the SEC title game with Carson Beck, and not that he played horrible, but
it wasn't his regular performance.
No, it wasn't his regular performance because, man, when you face that kind of pass rush and that kind of pressure, but just hats off to Michigan though. Their staff, what a game plan throughout these playoffs. What a season for them. But yeah, for these playoffs, I thought their staff was the best staff on the field each time they played. Their defensive line just wreaked havoc in both matchups. They got the run game going, and thought J.J. McCarthy did a great job of managing things, and thought they put him in very good positions to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
There was time in the game. I thought obviously Michigan jumped up pretty early, 17-3. They had a couple possessions where they had the ball in very good territory to put even more points on the board.
Yep.
Wasn't able to do it. Washington was able to respond a little bit, cut it to a touchdown going into halftime. They traded field goals in the third quarter, early third quarter. And so it remained a 7-point game. And as I said, Michigan just kind of took over in the fourth quarter, was able to dominate and really turn that pressure up even more. And was able to, and it was kind of one of those situations. Once it got to a 2-score game, they went up 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was over.
Even with Washington's offense, just the way the game was going, you knew it was over then. Just well-deserved for Michigan. And here they sit in a similar situation. What's Jim Harbaugh's future going to be?
I think he's going to the NFL. I really do.
I do too. I think we touched on this last week with the the NCAA situations that are going on, kind of swirling around that program right now. What's his future going to be? Obviously, a lot of people expect him to go to the NFL. So, how crazy is it to have the Alabama job? Obviously open up. Don't think that'll be for long, but the Michigan job potentially opening up as well here. So,
Does the Bama job, does Saban leaving potentially change Brian Kelly's decision to go to Michigan if he's offered the job? Because whether he says it or not, that's in the back of his mind. It's like, well, I'm at LSU. I got to play Bama every year or every other year. If I go to Michigan, I never have to play in. But now Saban's gone, so it's does that persuade him in any way? Do you think? Obviously, we don't have any reports on this, but in your opinion, I think it would sway him away from the Michigan job a little bit more.
I do too. I think it could play some effect. I don't think it would. I don't think it'd be necessarily something that kept him at LSU per se, because I do think that's a job obviously that would be attractive for him. So I would say it could play a small part in it for sure, but I don't think it would be like a deciding factor necessarily. But I do think that's a job he would take if offered, to be honest with you, to head back north. And that is the team with the most win. I mean, that's a premier brand in college football. And obviously he would be coming in, them back at the pinnacle of college football, and the way Harbaugh was able to elevate that. And obviously they're going to have a whole new team, and this was a very experienced team. So it would be, it wasn't like he would be taking over, with Blake Corum and J.J. McCarthy and all those guys. So, I mean, it would be some retooling to do for sure, but he would be taking over a program that had been elevated, obviously, to the top of the sport. So I think that would be an attractive job for him, certainly, and for anybody if it was offered to them. I just think of, though, Alabama's open. You could potentially have Michigan open. If Dan Lanning takes the Alabama job, that opens Oregon up. So,
if Brian Kelly takes the Michigan job, opens LSU up.
Yeah, so I mean, these not only Saban but the Harbaugh, it just sends complete ripple effects across college football. I mean, it's like an earthquake happening, and you feeling it halfway across the world. Like, I mean, it just looked like you don't. If an earthquake happens in California, we don't feel it here in Alabama. But it's like when you're talking about Nick Saban retire, like these kind of moves, I mean, it ripples across the entire sport. I mean, Saban in particular, that's how big of a deal it is. I mean, him leaving changes, and just him being at Alabama has impacted the entire sport. I mean, how many coaches? Just think, how many coaches have been fired because of Nick Saban at Alabama and teams trying to reach that standard. I mean, you cannot count on your hands and feet how many coaches that's ran out of town probably earlier than would have been because of people trying to reach that standard and trying to find some way to get to that standard, or to just come close to that standard. I mean, it's just the ripple effects are larger than I think even we realize. I mean, and the
right,
people in the sport realize. I mean, it is a monumental thing, and if Harbaugh leaves as well, that's just another ripple effect across the sport. So it's man, it's a crazy time to be covering it. But it's a good time to have a podcast. I can say that much.
Well, Bama fans, I can tell you one guy that ain't working right now, Brian Harsin. Go ahead and give him a call. I'm sure he'd be glad to come down there and coach for the Crimson Tide.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
I'll vouch for him. Great time.
I'll be honest with you. I think I really honestly, there's just as high odds I think of me and you getting offered. I'm gonna be honest with you. And I don't even think that's a big exaggeration either. I think that's actually pretty accurate, honestly. I think there's about the same odds, to be honest with you.
I'm with you. You got zero chance. He got negative chance.
But no, man, what a bombshell. I mean, there's honestly not much else you can say other than that. It's just like I said, something you knew that was inevitable and coming down the road, but at the same time, it's still shocking, still catches you off guard to some degree, certainly. I
It's
mean,
a
I'm on
party
the
in the
way.
college football world, baby.
I mean, I'm on the way
Including
home,
one city.
and Jocks is running a special tonight. They had uh
Oh, they
Pat
have people come
Smith,
in?
Pat Smith on the air. They had Cole Cubitt, Greg McElroy. I mean, it's like 7 o'clock. So yeah, I mean it's when something of this magnitude happens, it's all hands on deck. So
That's awesome. I might have to go back and listen to that. I had missed that.
yeah, I'm going to be catching up on coverage tonight. Obviously, been a busy day, whirlwind day. Just I mean, everybody's working. Everybody's got busy lives, but I'm
Topping it
going
off
to
with the best news I've heard in 25 years.
I'm going to I'm going to I don't want to say look forward to, but I'm definitely going to be deep into the Twitter/X tonight, going back and reading a bunch of reports and seeing if I missed anything. This is something my phone's gonna get a workout in the next couple of days. I'm gonna be swiping as much as I've ever swiped coming up. So, but yeah, just like I said, just to kind of recap, very thankful to get to witness it as a fan. And just super thankful for Nick Saban, what he accomplished, and like I said, just getting to witness it, with being being my team, being, if you're an Alabama fan, being your team, just feel super, super grateful to have witnessed it and appreciate it. But very, very intrigued and interested to see what's going to be coming in the next few days. And like I said, we'll be covering that on our Twitter account at Saturdays_SEC. So be sure to check in there. I'm as I'm sure everyone else here will be following along closely as well.
Yeah, and I'm super thankful that I got to witness him retire in my lifetime and give me a little bit of fun young life left where I could potentially see Auburn maybe compete for one again. So I really do appreciate Nick Saban for off thinking of me when he's going to retire, thinking, well, for 17 years I've given this boy absolute hell. He's 25 years old, about to be 26. Might as well let him live the rest of his life and maybe have a little bit bigger sliver of hope that his team can compete and get there and be the top echelon of college football. So I'm thankful that I lived not too long to see Nick Saban retire. So that way I still have a little bit of youthful life left to watch Auburn football potentially get it done.
Yeah, I did see I did see a tweet, a little pretty funny. I have to admit, somebody said, well, hopefully, Alabama will be able to beat a 9-win Auburn team now. So, but I have to admit that was pretty good one. I'm not gonna lie. I do want to talk a little bit about the transfer portal just before we wrap up tonight. Kind of one of the obviously kind of your typical roster movement. Obviously, we knew Alabama was going to have movement in the portal regardless of this happening. Before this happened, players were going to be exiting, incoming transfers, obviously recruiting class. So you have to clear out space via the portal and guys looking for more opportunities. So not a ton of surprises there. Our guy, one of our favorites, Roydell Williams, is in the transfer portal. Got a good bit of work for Alabama this past season. Curious to see where he ends up. I saw not long after he entered that Florida State had offered him pretty quickly. Earl Little and Malik Benson, both Alabama transfers, have already committed there. So, it's funny. Florida State, want to claim they're better than Alabama, but they sure are taking a lot of Alabama players this cycle. So that was kind of funny, but really curious.
They're losing the guys that are better than the Bama players.
Oh yeah, for sure, no doubt. But yeah, so I am curious to see where he ends up and hoping the best for him. Certainly, as guys that have a connection to him. So I'll be curious to see where he ends up at and hoping best for him. Really get some carries and kind of be a feature guy going forward. And then also the big news of the portal, Quinshon Judkins. I believe he hadn't even entered during our last podcast. I think it was after our last podcast when he entered the portal, leaving Ole Miss, and then he commits to Ohio State literally mere seconds after Michigan had won the national title. So it's kind of crazy timing. But just what were your thoughts on Judkins entering the portal and then obviously him ending up at Ohio State?
I thought, like we talked about, I thought it was crazy that he entered the portal. That's the most shocking name that I've seen hit the portal all year. It's the biggest name that's hit the portal for sure. Apparently, there were some reports that it was they weren't happy in the locker room and button heads and things along those lines. But he hits the portal. And Ohio State offers him. I don't know who all offered him. All I saw was that he committed to Ohio State with the only other school that I saw him, get an offer from. But I don't hate it. I think he's going to do, great job up there. They got Will Howard coming in too. I think their offense is going to look a little bit more like what we expect an Ohio State offense to look like, especially with a back like that. He's going to put up Zeke Elliott numbers for sure. He might break some of his records. So I think it's a great move for him. Traditionally, really, really, really good O-line. They like to run the football. Great conference. Going to be playing some really cool games, some really weird games too, with Washington and Oregon all joining the conference and things like that. But I think it's a great fit for him. I think they're going to ride him as much as they can. I think he's the best back in college football. I don't think there's any arguments about that. You have to have a pretty good argument to confirm me away from that or turn me away from that. Deter me is what I meant to say. But he's the best back in college football. So wherever he landed, it's going to be a good place for him, honestly. But landing in a place like that, who's going to have a real chance to compete, we're for sure going to see Quinshon Judkins. Lord willing, he stay healthy. We're going to see him at the end of the year next year in the postseason play. 100% believe that.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a good fit there. Yeah, it was definitely a surprise, certainly. I think, you had heard reporters reference like, hey, you'll see some surprise names in the portal. Certainly, and he certainly qualified as being that. So, I think he'll do very well there. Kind of want to see how that affects Travion Henderson, who's been a very good back up there as well. Like if that kind of leads to him, leaving for the NFL, or kind of what that situation is. So I do want to see how that plays out a little bit. But I think he was going to be a good fit no matter what. But he'll do very, very well up there. And but overall, we'll keep everyone updated as far as transfer portal. I'm sure we'll hear news on some Alabama players coming up soon that otherwise you wouldn't have. So
I do want to talk about the Auburn football hires before we get out of here. Or
yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Or people leaving. So Auburn has lost both coordinators, fired Philip Montgomery, offensive coordinator Philip Montgomery, and Ron Roberts has left as the defense coordinator. I don't know if that was a firing, mutual agreement, whatever it was. But Charles Kelly is coming over from Colorado as an Auburn alumni. People were thinking he could get the defense coordinator position, maybe a co-defensive coordinator position, something along those lines. I haven't really heard any names. Maybe Zach Arnett to come be the defense coordinator there. I haven't really heard anything from offensive wise. It's believed and been reported that Hugh Freeze is going to call plays next year offensively. So it's believed that he's going to go out and get a guy and slap the label as OC or co-OC, and also be like a quarterback coach or a receiver coach, but really pad the recruiting room and get a really good recruiter. What the reports and beliefs around the program are, that's what he's going to do. So obviously a lot of things to get rolling, and now in the start of the 2024 season, wasn't great for Phil Montgomery, so that's not that big a deal. I like Ron Roberts, but there were some things, definitely highs and lows there. But I'm excited to see where Hugh Freeze goes and how it's going to look next year and what he's going to change from year one to year two. But I did want to keep you guys updated on that and some of the names I'm hearing being thrown around for the coordinator positions. I haven't heard anything for offensive, but I don't think that's as pressing as defense coordinator is, because Hugh Freeze is expected to call plays next season.
Yeah, I don't think I was super surprised to hear. I mean, certainly on the offensive side of the ball, that was not surprising at all. Honestly, I feel like that was pretty expected to make a move there. especially after his comments after the bowl game, just kind of regarding the game plan and things like that. It kind of seemed like that Philip Montgomery would probably be, out the door, just the way things were sounding. But and then Ron Roberts defensively, like I said, wasn't super surprised to hear that either. I mean, that was more surprising than the offensive side of things. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, wasn't shocked to hear that. And I think they'll be just fine offensively. Like you said, it looks like he's going to call plays. So I think it'll be more of a guy to help him, game plan, coach quarterbacks, things along that nature. And then, yeah, curious to see what they do defensively, though, as well.
Absolutely. You got anything else you want to cover?
I think that's it, man. We just appreciate everybody tuning in. Just stay locked in with us, especially over the next few days as this, Alabama coaching situation kind of unfolds. I do want to leave, take it for what it's worth before we go off here. There are reports going around that Dan Lanning's already in Tuscaloosa. Like I said, don't know if that's 100%, but there are some reputable reporters saying that. Sometimes, though, when so many people start saying it, it might not be true. So, like I said, kind of take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but there are some reports as of tonight saying that Dan Lanning may already be in Tuscaloosa. So, which wouldn't be the most surprising thing either. Like I said, I do feel that it's going to be him. I think at worst case, it's his job to turn down. Certainly. I think he's 100%. Getting the first crack at it in my mind. Whether it ends up being him or not, remains to be seen, even though I believe it will. But at very worst case, it seems he's getting the first shot at it, certainly.
Yeah. I think it's great first call. It'd be my first call.
Yeah. So just kind of wanted to leave it on that note. Obviously, may even be some news before this podcast is put out. But anyways, we thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next week. And thank you all for a great 2023 season.
Thank you, guys.